I've been told from on high this morning, meaning the balcony, that my lavalier mic is intermittent. So I'll be preaching from the pulpit. Hear these words from the Gospel according to John, chapter 15, verses 12 through 17. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one is greater than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends, if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because a servant doesn't know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from the Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. Ends our scripture passage for today. Have you ever felt like an outsider? Most everybody has at some point in their life. There's something that has gone on, and there's a group, an inside group that seems to be doing really well, but you are just on the outside of it. You really don't know how to penetrate to be part of that inner circle. You're just there, but you're really not part. When I think back on my life, especially my younger life, I think that I psychologically was an outsider. A couple of things I think led to it. One was that, and they had nothing to do with the way that I learned anything. It had to do with being born the way I was. One, I was ambidextrous, which means I could use both of my hands to do what I did. But the problem with that is you don't do anything really well if you use both your hands to do what you're doing. And in the little town that I grew up in, sports was everything for little boys. And I sucked bad at sports. And so I just felt like an outsider, relegated to right field in Little League, had to be the center in basketball just because I was tall, not because, and the thing was, don't shoot, pass it to somebody else. And even then, that wasn't very successful. The other thing that made a difference for me as far as school is I had dyslexia, undiagnosed, which was great because, here you are struggling to try to find one word in front of another. Reading in front of the class might as well have been just sending me off to the firing squad. I just didn't want to do that. Make me even more nervous, make the dyslexia even worse. And it was like, they finally caught up to me, though, in third grade and made me repeat. It was really a drag as far as that concerned. Years later, I thought I was an utter failure and had to go repeat again a grade. And my mother set me straight and said, no, they would have put you on, but your dad and I knew that you weren't going to make it if they just kept passing you. You needed to learn to read. I had loving parents, but they weren't the greatest at communicating at the time. And so I just felt like an outsider. I felt like that was my lot in life, to look at the outside of things and wish that you could be a part of that center group, that group that seemed to make a difference, the group that seemed to enjoy each other and be there, but I was the outsider. And sometimes I think that we embrace that to a certain extent and not want to be, we just take that as our given. Oh, I'm an outsider. Or I don't really like crowds, or, it can be a whole list of things, that say, well, this is me, and I'm going to be this way. But something happened to me when I was in high school. I had an experience of God in Jesus Christ, and it changed me in some remarkable ways when I think back about over my life. Well, for one, if I hadn't had that experience, I don't think I'd be standing in front of you here today. But the other thing about that is that there was something that happened materially to me, emotionally to me, and psychologically to me that changed the footing of the way I looked at life. First thing was I really felt like I was on the inside of something at that point, that I had received a kind of welcome, not just from ethereal from God, but from the people who I was with at that time, who were all much older than me, my parents' age, who were in that little Bible study at the time, that just changed my perspective on what life in a community was like. The other thing is there was a minister at that time at the church who really kind of got where I was coming from, and we would do things together, and showed me that, what hospitality was like and what welcome was like. And the third thing that I think I got out of that was probably the most important part, is that no matter what I did or where I went or anything else, I wasn't alone. I had God's companionship of love. And in Jesus, I had a way and an agent to look at the world as it is and see change. So those were the things I really grabbed out of that. And I would say over the rest of my life has been probably evolution of change. Things that I once believed, I don't hold on it to any longer. Some things that I believed at the beginning, I hold on to even stronger. And the way that I look at the world, and the way that I see people around me, I probably have two things that are still operating. One, I believe everybody's life journey is unique to themselves, and their experience of God is unique to themselves. And if you are a follower of Jesus Christ, you are going to be looking at the world a little differently than a person who isn't. First thing. The second thing is that everyone, no matter if they have a faith or not, have the capacity to change and to make the world a better place. It's within our created nature, I believe, that we all have the capacity to change. Just because I was able to do it, you should be able to do it. Now, that's to say that it's a big, small, but we have the capacity to change. We're not stuck. We're not who we are. We're not imprinted from the beginning of life, and we go all the way to the end, and that's the end. We have choices that we make. We have things we can do. There are things that we can bring about. We have agency to make a difference. The last few weeks in church, we've been kind of talking about what it is to be a part of a Christian community, what it is that we hold together in common, those things that bind us to one another and to bind us to the church and to the world around us. Sometimes those things are hard for people to just kind of speak and define in any kind of, concrete way other than emotionally the way it feels like. Well, I was welcomed here, so therefore I feel welcomed. And then others, they really gravitate to the physical things that we do, like we have a shelter here, and we support Inland Valley Hope Partners as having them part of us, and we're a large enough congregation that we can actually give space to other congregations like St. Anne's to be here, or that we have made some seismic decisions about being open and affirming, for example, for changing the way that we see the world around us to the point where we have women and men who are in equal leadership in the congregation. There are lots of things that we've done together as a congregation that makes this place unique to itself. One time, we were being visited by another minister in the area who was doing some recruiting to become part of an organization which later we became part of, which is ICON, Inland Empire's Community Network. And that was, it was a person named Bob Lithicum, who was a Presbyterian minister, retired, and he wanted to know what we did here. So Julie and I or I think it was me at the time, just sat down and talked about all the things that we do here. And he said, you have a really unique ministry. And, it was funny, when he said that to me, I was really kind of offended that we have a unique ministry. Well, doesn't everybody do what we do? And he said, well, not really. Most all churches are unique to the places where they live and the people who come to it. You can't shuffle the deck and deal the cards and say they're all the same, because all churches represent the place they are and the people who come to it. And I think about the evolution of our own congregation and the way that we have changed through time and the way that we have created community around us. It's easy to say, it's really easy to say and to state who you are. You can go to the website and just read who we are and what we do. The hardest thing to do corporately is to live that out in a concrete way for people who walk through the door who don't know anything about you. It's great to say it on the website that, oh, everyone's welcome and we do this and that. But when someone comes through the door, if we don't greet them, if we don't want to hear their story, if we are not prepared to let them change us, we're really not servicing Christ in this place. The beginning of the Disciples of Christ movement was a reaction against the church culture that it had at that time. They were out on the frontier. They wanted to do their own thing. They were tired of being told what the Methodists and the Baptists and the Presbyterians were doing. They wanted to do their own thing. And so they came to this conclusion that, well, we can do our own thing, and we will go back to the New Testament and do it just as they did in the New Testament. Well, the problem that they had was the only document they had to tell them what they did in the New Testament was the Bible itself. When you might think, well, that's a great document to work from. Well, let me tell you, the Bible, believe it or not, contradicts itself a lot. In that if you say, well, this is what the New Testament churches did in Romans, and then you say, well, this is what the New Testament did in Galatians, you'll find that they're different churches and they're doing different things. And so they made several assumptions there. One was that everyone agreed in the New Testament how to do church. The other thing they assumed was that if men are in charge in the New Testament, men should be in charge today. You still get that today, don't you? What happens, though, with any kind of faith experience, it evolves. Think of your own faith, the way you believed at one point and the way you believe now. If you're really serious about it, you will say that, well, once I held this opinion and now I held this opinion, and it can be a balancing act of what you want to do and how you want to see. The thing that made it work, though, as far as this movement that was started in the 1830s, was somewhere along the way, they decided to say that, here it comes, this is the thing that always shocks all my other denominational friends, is that the clergy have no power. Yep, that means me, and that means that I don't run the church. It's really up to the people who are here to run it. And it's really up to the people here to set the agenda of who we are as a community. And so what has happened in this place is there's been a great evolution to who we are because there's been a great evolution of the people who are here. And that evolution is caused by, get ready for it, people who come through the door. Because we've all come through different doors in our lives. We've all felt like we are outsiders. We all have gifts to share. We all have things that burden us. We all have a little bit of us that is hidden. We all have a little bit of us that is seen by everyone. But it's only in this space that we can really become, I shouldn't say only in this space, but in this space, we can be seen as we really are in God's eyes. And the great thing about it is we can be seen by others of who we are in God's eyes. For the outsider, there's a chance to be welcomed for who you really are. Not that we're going to say you have to be this way or that way to be here. For the people who are looking for companionship and community, there is probably someone here that you might really find interesting, and maybe a friendship could be evolved from that. And the other thing that's interesting about this congregation is you really can't judge the book by the cover so much. You can go to the website and find out all kinds of other things. You can look to us online and hear words that we speak. But the real ins and outs of it all is that how we respond to one another, either online or here, I suspect, makes a real difference in the world. That we have the capacity to change the world in little ways right here, and to change ourselves in little ways right here. Jesus, in John's Gospel, kind of flipped the thing on us, didn't he? Rather than a master, he wanted to be a friend. Rather than the teacher, he wanted to be an equal. He wanted to see and experience people on a level plane. a plane in which we're not just venerating Jesus because of him being on a cross, but we're venerating him because he is one of us, that he had ups and downs like we did, that he understands the dynamic of being a part of the human race and to live under oppression and to stand up for things you believe in and to be something more than you are at any one moment. From the good news of Christ from the beginning to the good news of Christ in the resurrection, we are ones who mirror that in the world. We are the ones who give ourselves over to something that is even bigger than us, and that is welcome and friendship and love. Amen.